Controversial idea, stirring debate on college campuses where some students are calling on professors to implement what are known as trigger warnings, labels used to flag course materials deemed violent or sexually explicit.
Should American colleges try to protect students from anything, words, books, even ideas, simply because it might upset them?
You know, I don't agree that when you become students at colleges, have to be coddled and protected from different points of view.
I use trigger warnings in my classes. I think they are absolutely appropriate. I think they should never be mandatory. But I also think that it is absolutely crucial to create an environment where everybody can participate in a classroom discussion.
Trigger warnings have become a provocative issue within our society, especially on college campuses such as Barnard and Columbia's. Within recent years, there have been many protests and discussions amongst teachers and students here alike, discussing not only what trigger warnings are like in the curriculum now, but what their place is in the future. What are the benefits, what are the negatives, and where do we see our community going with trigger warnings?
The syllabus was very explicit in giving a trigger warning before. For instance, one text in particular that we read at the beginning of the semester was laid in the Swan, and we were warned about that. So that is one example that I can think of trigger warnings in the classroom.
So in my Legacy of the Mediterranean class, there aren't really trigger warnings. No one in the class has really expressed interest to have trigger warnings, so I think our teacher has just kind of gone with the flow as far as that is. I'm sure if someone said something that there might be, but I think we're all very interested in kind of the shock factor that comes along with being uncomfortable with certain things, and we definitely talk about that discomfort.
So what are the books that have caused so much debate? Why do some teachers decide to use trigger warnings in their curriculum, and why do others not? According to an article by Columbia's blog, in the first semester, a quarter of the characters in the core curriculum were women, and about 20% of those women were raped. In the second semester, around 50% were raped. There's lots of crossover between the core curriculum and Legacy of the Mediterranean. Some books include Ovid's Metamorphosis, which has rape in a large portion of the tales, such as Apollo and Daphne, as well as Tereus and Philomena. The Odyssey is also comprised of many books, with one in particular consisting of rape and looting. Now, these books are classic, and many argue they're an incomparable part of education. But why should students be exposed to issues like rape, suicide, and other issues they may have had negative experiences with in the past, and it could even bring on PTSD? So the argument is, the classroom an important place for students to be pushed out of their comfort zones to learn and grow? Or is it something that needs to be warned?
The way that I see them is more from the lens of they can inhibit the productivity of a discussion in a classroom, because I don't know, people feel more people feel the need to, I feel because of trigger warnings, people feel the need to hold back in discussion. But that being said, that doesn't mean that that's such a bad thing all the time.
But according to a majority of professors, trigger warnings are a bad thing most of the time. In a survey conducted by the Huffington Post, only 7% of professors thought using trigger warnings in their classes was a good idea, and almost 70% thought that it was a negative addition to their class. According to Sarah Roth in an article of the Chronicle of Higher Education, one of her biggest concerns about trigger warnings is that they will apply not just to those who have experienced trauma, but to all students, creating an atmosphere in which they are encouraged to believe that there is something dangerous or damaging about discussing difficult aspects of our history. If professors, who are some of the most respected and well-educated academics, as well as guides, for our society, believe that trigger warnings impede the ability for students to learn, what's holding us back from stopping these?
Simply because if someone has been through a serious trauma or has been a victim of some sort of assault, a trigger warning is not babying them, and it's not holding them back from the real world, but rather it's preventing them from having a really serious anxiety attack, panic attack, or other really harmful mental reaction in or outside of the classroom.
Yet according to an article published in The Atlantic this September, it actually may be better to experience these situations in the classroom. This article, in regards to trigger warnings, states that the way for people affected by trauma to return to normalcy is through exposure therapy. Putting someone who has experienced trauma in a situation that does not reinforce their original fear, but exposes them to content in a safe environment, can form new associations in the brain regarding those traumas. As Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, the authors of this article, put it, a discussion of violence is unlikely to be followed by actual violence in the classroom, so it is a good way to help students change the associations that are causing them discomfort. And they better get their habituation done in college, because the world beyond college will be far less willing to accommodate requests for trigger warnings and opt-outs. Now you've had a chance to hear about the debate surrounding trigger warnings on our campus. Trigger warnings are generally not approved by professors. They place students in a position where they're unable to push past their comfort zones, and they most likely will not help victims as much as addressing the situation in a safe environment like the classroom. Trigger warnings should not be used on college campuses, so start conversations, talk to people, and advocate the benefits of trigger warnings not being used in our classrooms.